The sun poured down across the university quad, bouncing off the white gowns and bright bouquets that parents clutched in their arms. The air carried a mixture of perfume sweat and the faint metallic tang of folding chairs dragged across the pavement. It was graduation day, the kind of day Anna Parker had dreamed of since she was 12 years old and imagined herself walking across a stage to receive a diploma no one could ever take away. At 23, she stood there in her black robe and cap, the tassel swinging against her cheek as she tried to spot her family in the crowd. Around her, students posed with their parents' fathers wiping proud tears, mothers clasping flowers so large they nearly toppled over. Anna clutched the rolled diploma she had earned through years of sleepless nights, late study sessions, and 3 different part-time jobs that kept her afloat while others went out partying. Finally, she spotted them near the edge of the quad, her father Richard with his chest puffed out, her mother Linda at his side with a camera dangling from her wrist, and her brother Brian in his tailored suit sunglasses perched arrogantly on his nose. For a moment, Anna's heart leapt. This was it, the moment they would look at her and see more than just the dependable daughter who never needed anything. Maybe today they would see the woman who had achieved what no one else in their family had. She hurried toward them, diploma in hand, her voice trembling with excitement. "Dad, I did it!" She held out the certificate as if offering proof, but before the words could land, her father's hand whipped across her face. The crack of skin on skin echoed louder than the cheers and laughter around them. The crowd gasped. A mother nearby clutched her child's shoulder. Anna staggered back, heat blooming across her cheek. "Do not interrupt your brother's moment!" Richard growled, his breath sharp with the bitterness of whiskey. "You always want to steal the spotlight." Anna's eyes blurred as she tried to understand. Her diploma trembled in her hand, a fragile slip of paper compared to the gleaming object beside them. Parked proudly at the edge of the lot was a brand-new Porsche, a thick red ribbon tied across the hood like the prize of a lifetime. Brian leaned against it, grinning for photos as relatives snapped pictures on their phones. Richard shoved something into Anna's palm, a flimsy piece of paper edges still damp from the kiosk dispenser. A bus pass, $2 stamped in bold black ink. "Get yourself home," he sneered. "You are always resourceful." The humiliation surged like a wave. Anna glanced down at the cheap pass, then back up at the Porsche shining in the sunlight. Around her, whispers rose. "Is that her dad? Did he just hit her? Look at the car. Look at her face." Brian laughed, sliding into the driver's seat as if he had earned every polished inch of the machine. The engine roared to life, drowning out Anna's silence. Her mother lifted the camera toward Brian, clicking shot after shot, never once turning the lens toward her daughter. Anna pressed the bus pass against her trembling fingers. She wanted to cry, to scream, to collapse onto the pavement. Instead, she swallowed the salt in her throat and forced her spine straight. She felt the sting on her cheek, the burn of eyes watching the wait of 30 seconds that had crystallized a lifetime of being less. She thought of all the nights spent hunched over drafting tables, sketching blueprints until her hand cramped. She thought of the bills she had paid alone, the meals skipped so rent would be covered, the way she had carried herself when no one else bothered to lift a finger. And now, in front of classmates and strangers, her father had defined her worth with a $2 pass while crowning her brother with a car worth more than her entire education. The sun was bright, but Anna felt cold. Her legs shook, yet she stayed upright, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Inside her chest, something hard and heavy shifted. The bus pass cut against her palm like a blade. She realized in that instant this was not simply another slight, not another day of being overlooked. This was the end of a pattern. Brian revved the engine, posing like a celebrity. Her mother clapped, her father beamed with pride. And Anna stood alone, the sting of his hand still across her cheek, the humiliation heavy as stone, the $2 symbol of dismissal pressed into her skin. She turned away, lips pressed into a line, tears burning at the edges but refusing to fall. The crowd began to disperse. Graduates hurried off with their families for celebratory dinners. The noise faded, leaving only the memory of the slap, the gleam of the Porsche, and the bus pass clutched so tightly her knuckles whitened. Anna Parker was 23 years old, and for the first time she felt the truth as sharp and undeniable as the bruise rising on her cheek. She was never going to matter in this family the way her brother did. Not now. Not ever. And that realization, painful as it was, would soon drive her toward a decision that would change everything. Anna walked away from the crowd that afternoon, but her mind did not leave the moment behind. The sting on her cheek triggered an avalanche of memories, each one layered with the same bitter taste of favoritism that had shadowed her life since childhood. She remembered being 7 years old when Brian turned 9. Their backyard transformed into a miniature carnival with rented ponies trotting in circles, a bounce house inflated in the corner, and a 3-tiered castle cake carried out by their mother as neighbors clapped and cheered. She had stood in the crowd with wide eyes, sticky fingers clutching a paper plate, waiting for a slice that took forever to reach her. 1 year later, on her 8th birthday, the house was quiet. No ponies, no guests beyond 2 friends from her class and a grocery store sheet cake with her name written in uneven icing. When she had asked why her father had said that Brian needed the stimulation he needed to be celebrated to keep his confidence up, "You are more independent, Anna," he had insisted, as if independence were a prize instead of a sentence. Independence had become the family's code word for neglect. By the time she was 12, she no longer asked for parties. She remembered standing on the stage at her high school auditorium at 18, valedictorian of her class. Her voice quivered with pride as she spoke about persistence, hard work, and the importance of dreaming beyond obstacles. The applause had roared, classmates rising to their feet, teachers beaming. She had looked to the section reserved for families and found empty chairs. Her mother and father had driven 3 hours away to attend Brian's junior varsity soccer game, cheering for him as he sat on the bench and never once touched the ball. Later, her mother had patted her hand and said, "We will watch the recording, honey," as if a VHS tape could substitute for parental pride. "Brian needs the encouragement," her mother had added, her tone sweet and patronizing. "You always succeed without our help." Without help had become another code, another excuse. It meant you are on your own. At 19, Anna entered college with scholarships and student loans. She took shifts at the campus bookstore, the cafeteria, and a tutoring center, stacking hours until her bones ached. Every dollar went into tuition rent and textbooks. Meanwhile, Brian dropped out of 2 colleges in succession, racking up thousands of dollars in unpaid tuition. Their father had written the checks to clear his debts without hesitation, his only explanation that Brian deserved another chance. He always deserves another chance, Anna thought. But what about me? She remembered evenings when she dragged herself home from work to study, her body trembling with fatigue, while Brian sprawled on the couch in designer clothes their father bought, scrolling his phone and complaining about how unfair professors were. Each time Anna tried to argue, her father's voice had sharpened. "You do not talk back." Once, when she refused to hand over the car keys she had paid for Richard, slammed her against the hallway wall so hard that the picture frames rattled. The bruise across her shoulder lasted 2 weeks. Her mother had rushed in with a cold compress, whispering, "Con man May, you will be fine. You are tougher than most," as if toughness excused the violence. Anna had swallowed her rage, swallowed her tears, swallowed her need for safety, because in her family any display of hurt was twisted into weakness. Now, at 23, diploma in hand, she finally saw the entire pattern as if it had been laid out in blueprint form before her. Birthday parties where Brian was the star, graduations where her achievements went unnoticed, college years where her sacrifices were invisible while his failures were bankrolled, physical slaps that stung less than the constant emotional reminders that she would never be enough for them. She replayed the words she had heard for decades. "Brian needs this. Brian deserves that. You are independent. You do not need us. You are stronger than most." In truth, those words had been daggers, each one carving deeper into her sense of worth. The $2 bus pass pressed into her palm was not simply an insult on graduation day. It was the physical embodiment of every dismissal, every moment when her needs had been deemed less important. It symbolized the house parties she never had the tuition, help she never received, the applause she never heard from them, and the bruises she was told to ignore. Standing in the parking lot that afternoon, Porsche engine roaring, family cheering for Brian, Anna finally understood that the slap had not come out of nowhere. It was the culmination of years of being treated as the shadow child. What burned most was not the pain, but the clarity. Her father had not just struck her cheek. He had struck every memory, every effort, every moment she had fought to prove herself. He had reminded her in front of everyone that she was worth $2, nothing more. The flashbacks collided with the present until Anna felt suffocated, her chest tight, as if someone had bound her lungs in iron. She gripped the bus pass harder, her nails cutting into her skin, and forced herself to walk away from the scene. The Porsche revved again, Brian waving to a group of cousins, her mother beaming proudly beside the gleaming red ribbon. Anna knew in that instant that she had reached the end of the line. Independent strength, responsibility. All the words they used to justify neglect had built a cage around her. Now the bus pass in her hand was the key. She was ready to step outside, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. That night, the Parker house glowed with strings of lights draped across the porch, laughter spilling into the humid air as neighbors and friends gathered to toast Brian's Porsche. Champagne bottles popped, music thumped from rented speakers, and clusters of people surrounded the gleaming car parked in the driveway as if it were the true graduate. Anna sat at the edge of the living room on a dining chair pushed against the wall. Her black robe folded across her lap, the diploma tucked inside her purse, like a secret no one cared to discover. Her cheeks still throbbed where her father's palm had landed, the sting deepened by every burst of applause for Brian when he revved the engine. She had brought gifts carefully chosen over months of saving a silver watch for her father, whose old one had cracked, and a camera for her mother, who always talked about capturing family memories. When she placed them on the table, Richard barely glanced at the box, muttering something about already having a watch that worked fine. Linda peeled the wrapping from the camera and nodded politely before setting it aside, her eyes snapping back to Brian as he adjusted his suit jacket for another round of photos. Anna's chest tightened as she watched her gifts slide across the counter unnoticed while glasses of champagne clinked in honor of her brother. The crowd gathered outside cheered again as the Porsche headlights cut through the night, Brian revving for attention. Anna pressed her hand to her cheek, feeling the swelling beneath her skin, the dull ache that reminded her she had been struck not just as a daughter, but as an afterthought. She overheard her mother telling an aunt that Brian had a bright future. Now clients would take him seriously when they saw him step out of a Porsche. Appearances mattered in business. Anna wanted to laugh bitter and hollow because she had stepped into interviews with nothing more than her portfolio and confidence, and still earned offers on her own merit. No one had bought her credibility. No one had invested in her dreams. Linda noticed Anna sitting silently and drifted over, placing a manicured hand on her shoulder. "You will be fine, sweetheart. You always are." That same refrain again, those words she had heard all her life. Words that erased need and painted over wounds. Anna forced a nod, biting back the scream that pressed against her ribs. She wanted to ask why a son deserved champagne and a Porsche, while a daughter deserved only silence and a bruise. Instead, she tucked the bus pass deeper into her purse, its edges scratching against her fingers, a reminder that tonight was not an isolated cruelty, but the clearest message yet. She slipped away from the party and into the kitchen, the noise muffled by walls, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She poured herself a glass of water, staring at her reflection in the sliding glass door. The girl looking back was pale, her eyes ringed with exhaustion, the red mark still bright across her face. She lifted the bus pass again and turned it over, wondering if $2 was truly the value her father placed on her presence. Outside, Brian laughed drunk on attention while Richard raised his glass to toast his only son. Anna's stomach twisted with nausea. She wanted to be anywhere but here yet. Here she was still seated at their table, still trying to earn a place that was never meant for her. Midnight came and the crowd thinned, cars pulling away, music fading. Anna remained in the corner, invisible as her parents embraced Brian in the driveway. He waved the Porsche keys like a trophy. She stared at the bus pass one more time, realization flooding her chest with both pain and resolve. If she stayed, nothing would ever change. The pass was not just a ticket for a ride across town. It was a message brutal and simple. Get out. You are worth nothing. And maybe, just maybe, it could also be the ticket out of a lifetime of humiliation. The house finally fell silent after 1 in the morning, the clink of champagne glasses replaced by the soft drone of the dishwasher and the occasional creak of settling wood beams. Anna sat on the edge of her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows of glow in the dark stars she had stuck there at age 10, faintly visible in the dark. Her purse lay open on the nightstand, the bus pass glinting beneath the streetlight that slipped through the blinds. She could still hear her father's voice commanding her to get herself home, still feel the sting of his slap, still see her mother's camera lens focused entirely on Brian. The ache in her cheek throbbed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She rose quietly, careful not to disturb the floorboards, and pulled a duffel bag from the closet. Into it, she placed the essentials, her laptop, the thick folder of architectural designs she had worked on through sleepless nights, a change of clothes, and the stuffed bear her grandmother had given her before she died. She left behind the new watch she had given her father and the camera for her mother gifts discarded as easily as her efforts had always been. In the kitchen, she paused her hand, hovering above the counter where a bowl of keys sat. Slowly, she pulled out the key to the house, the one she had carried since high school. For a moment, it rested cold and heavy in her palm. Then she set it down beside the coffee maker. The silence pressed against her ears. At 2:00 a.m., the clock on the microwave glowed green, unyielding. Anna slung the duffel bag across her shoulder, slipped on her sneakers, and stepped outside into the night air. The driveway smelled faintly of exhaust, the Porsche parked like a monument to everything she was not. She glanced at it once, then turned away and slid into her battered Toyota Corolla, the car she had paid for with her own wages. The engine sputtered but caught loyal despite the years. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, the bus pass clutched in her fist. For a moment, she simply sat there, the house looming in the rearview mirror, memories pressing down like a weight. Every insult, every forgotten birthday, every bruise whispered that leaving was betrayal. But another voice, sharper and clearer, whispered back that staying was worse. She put the car into gear. As she pulled away, the porch light flickered, casting a pale glow across the lawn, but no one stirred. No one came to the door. The road stretched before her, lined with sleeping houses, the streetlights forming halos on the pavement. At the intersection, she paused, the bus pass still tight in her hand. It was supposed to be a dismissal, a message that she was worth the price of public transport while her brother was worth a luxury car. But in her palm, it felt like something else entirely, like proof that she had the strength to walk away. She pressed it against the dashboard, letting it sit there as a talisman, a reminder that tonight she was choosing a different path. As the clock blinked past 2:15 a.m., Anna Parker drove into the night, her cheeks still bruised, her eyes burning her chest, both hollow and heavy. The familiar streets of her hometown slipped by, and for the first time she allowed herself to believe that maybe the road ahead could hold something more than humiliation. The highway stretched endlessly, black asphalt gleaming under the dim yellow streetlights, the hum of her Corolla filling the silence that had replaced her family's voices. Anna's hands ached from gripping the wheel too tightly, her eyes burning from tears that had refused to fall. At 3 in the morning, she finally pulled into a rest stop, the neon lights flickering above vending machines and a line of parked trucks. She sat there trembling, staring at the bus pass on her dashboard, its cheap paper mocking her. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, but she pulled it out anyway. Her fingers hovered before dialing the one person she knew would answer. Grace. Her best friend from college, the one who had seen her grind through endless nights at the drafting table, the one who had slipped her snacks during marathon study sessions, the one who knew the truth about her family because she had witnessed pieces of it during holidays when Anna had stayed on campus instead of going home. The phone rang once before Grace answered, voice thick with sleep but immediately alert. Anna, where are you? Grace's voice softened as soon as she heard the catch in Anna's breath. Anna swallowed hard, whispering, I left. I could not stay. She told her everything in a rush, words tumbling out like a dam, breaking the slap in the parking lot, The Porsche with the red ribbon, the bus pass pressed into her palm like a cruel joke. Silence followed for a beat, then Grace spoke firmly. "You are not going back there. Come here, my door is open," Anna protested weakly. "I cannot impose, it is the middle of the night." Grace cut her off. "Family is not who shares your blood. Family is who shows up for you. I am showing up. Drive safe. I will make coffee." Anna's chest cracked open at those words, tears finally spilling down her cheeks, hot and relentless. No one in her family had ever spoken to her like that, had ever offered unconditional belonging. She gripped the wheel again, pulled back onto the road, and drove toward the city where Grace lived. At 3:45, she arrived, headlights catching the chipped paint of Grace's apartment building. The door opened before she even knocked. Grace stood there in pajama pants, hair messy, eyes kind. She pulled Anna inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and guided her to the couch. The small apartment smelled faintly of coffee grounds and lavender candles. Grace handed her a steaming mug and listened without interruption as Anna retold the story, every detail spilling out under the dim lamplight. By the time she finished, the mug had gone cold in her hands. Grace placed a hand on hers, steady and warm. "You are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not worthless. They want you to believe those lies because it keeps you small, but you are not small. You are one of the strongest people I know." The words struck deeper than any slap, carving out space where hope could grow. For the first time that night, Anna felt a flicker of something new. Not anger, not humiliation, but the possibility that she was more than what her father had defined her to be. She looked down at the bus pass on the coffee table. It no longer looked like trash. It looked like proof. Proof she had survived. Proof she had chosen to leave. Proof she had someone willing to catch her when her own family let her fall. Grace leaned back against the couch, squeezing her hand again. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we figure out what is next." Anna curled beneath the blanket, exhaustion dragging her under, but before she closed her eyes, she whispered words that surprised even herself. "Thank you for being my family." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of Grace's apartment, dust motes swirling in the golden beams that cut across the cluttered coffee table. Anna woke on the couch with the blanket tangled around her legs, the bus pass still on the table where she had left it. For a moment, she felt disoriented, the silence foreign after years of waking to her father's barked orders or her mother's sighs. Then the memory of the night before flooded back, the slap, the Porsche, the drive into the dark, and her chest tightened. Grace appeared from the kitchen holding 2 mugs of coffee, her curls pulled into a messy bun, her eyes sharp but kind. "You look like hell," she said gently, setting the mug down. Anna managed a weak laugh. "I feel worse." Grace sat beside her, sipping her coffee. "So, what is the plan?" Anna stared at her hands. "I do not have one. I have my portfolio, my laptop, but no job lined up, no place to stay." Grace tilted her head. "You have me. Start there." That afternoon, Anna unpacked her duffel bag in the small corner of Grace's apartment that now belonged to her. The space was cramped but safe, the walls bare but welcoming. She spread her blueprints across the table, her hands trembling with both fear and determination. For the first time, she felt she was building a life on her own terms. Within a week, she secured an interview at a local architecture firm. She wore her only blazer, nerves gnawing at her stomach as she presented her designs to a panel of senior architects. They flipped through her portfolio, nodding at the clean lines, the innovative use of light and space. One of them asked how she had managed so much work while still in school. She told the truth. "I worked 3 jobs, slept very little, and poured everything I had into this." Their eyes softened. 2 days later, she received an offer for a junior architect position. The salary was modest, but steady enough to cover a small studio apartment and groceries. Grace celebrated by cooking pasta in a chipped pot, the 2 of them eating cross-legged on the floor, laughter spilling into the night. It was not champagne and Porsche keys, but it was real. It was hers. On Saturdays, Anna joined a pottery class at the community center. At first, her hands fumbled clay, collapsing into shapeless lumps. But the instructor, an older woman with silver hair, guided her patiently. "Do not force it, listen to what it wants to become." Slowly, Anna's touch grew steadier, her bowls and cups imperfect but alive. Each piece felt like a metaphor for her own life, misshapen yet resilient, cracked yet whole. She lined them on the windowsill of her new apartment, sunlight catching the uneven edges like badges of survival. Therapy followed. Grace insisted on it, handing her the business card of Dr. Elaine Levine, a therapist known for working with survivors of family trauma. The office smelled of lemon polish and old books, the walls lined with framed diplomas. Dr. Levine spoke softly, leaving long silences that forced Anna to confront words she had buried for years. Favoritism, Anna whispered during the second session, the word heavy as stone. My whole life, Dr. Levine nodded. And how did that make you feel? Like I was worth exactly $2. Anna answered, voice breaking. Week by week, she peeled back the layers of her pain. She recounted birthdays, overshadowed graduations, ignored bruises, dismissed. She wept, she raged, she sat in silence. Slowly, she learned to separate her value from her family's treatment, to see herself as more than their scapegoat. Outside therapy, Anna built routines. Early morning runs through the city streets, late nights sketching designs by lamplight, Sunday dinners with Grace and neighbors who treated her like she belonged. She bought second-hand furniture piece by piece, a futon that unfolded into a bed, a lamp with a crooked shade, a desk scarred with scratches. Her apartment was small, but it was hers, every imperfection chosen rather than imposed. Yet even in these moments of growth, the pain lingered. Sometimes she woke in the night, cheek burning with phantom memory, the echo of her father's voice hissing that she would never be enough. Other times, she saw a Porsche glide past on the street and her stomach clenched. But then she would glance at the bus pass framed on her wall, the paper faded but intact, and remind herself that leaving had been an act of strength, not shame. The bus pass was no longer a dismissal. It was proof of her survival. And slowly, brick by brick, Anna Parker rebuilt the foundation of her life. The weeks slipped into months, and Anna's new life began to take shape with fragile stability. She balanced work deadlines, therapy sessions, and pottery classes, her days full but manageable. Then the phone calls started. The first came on a Wednesday evening as she walked home from the office, the skyline glowing pink in the sunset. The screen lit up with her father's name. For a moment, she almost let it go to voicemail, but old reflexes made her swipe to answer. His voice was sharp and commanding. If you do not come home, do not bother calling yourself my daughter again. The words froze her steps. She wanted to shout back, but instead she hung up, fingers trembling. 2 days later, it was her mother. Linda's voice quivered as she said the doctor had warned her about dangerously high blood pressure, that the stress of Anna's selfishness was killing her. Is that what you want for your mother to collapse? Because you left Anna pressed the phone to her ear, her chest heavy with guilt, but she did not respond. She ended the call and cried silently in the shower, the water hiding her tears. On Sunday, she opened social media to see Brian posing beside the Porsche again. Sunglasses glinting captioned, "Thanks to the best parents in the world for believing in me." The comments were filled with admiration, likes piling up, while Anna's own achievements remained invisible. Rage surged, then drained into exhaustion. She clicked block, her thumb pressing down with finality. Calls multiplied, voicemails piling up with alternating threats and pleas. Richard demanded she return or be cut out of the family entirely. Linda wept about how holidays would be ruined without her. Brian bragged about upcoming trips and hinted that she was missing out. Each message carried the same undertone control. Anna played them for Grace one evening, her hands shaking. Grace listened silently, then asked, "Why do you keep letting their voices in?" She stared at the phone, realizing she did not have an answer. With a deep breath, she deleted every voicemail, blocked every number, silenced the noise that had dictated her life for 23 years. The apartment felt suddenly lighter, as if a heavy curtain had been pulled away from the windows. Yet even with the calls silenced, the war inside her chest raged on. She felt guilt coil like a snake in her stomach, the old conditioning whispering that she was betraying her family. But another voice stronger now reminded her that cutting ties was survival, not betrayal. Late one night, she sat at her desk, sketching a new building design, her pencil moving across the page with confident strokes. The city outside hummed alive and indifferent. She looked at the framed bus pass on the wall, its faded ink a reminder of both pain and liberation. She whispered aloud to the empty room, "I am not going back." The words felt like a vow, steady and irrevocable. For the first time, she believed them. The invitation arrived in late autumn, a cream-colored envelope addressed in looping cursive to Anna Parker. Inside, a cousin's wedding announcement gleamed with embossed lettering promising a lavish ceremony where the entire Parker clan would gather. Anna's hands shook as she read it. She had not seen her parents or brother since the night she left, but now here was an unavoidable summons. For days she debated throwing it away, yet something inside urged her to attend. Not for reconciliation, but for truth. She spent the following week preparing. Grace helped her choose a navy dress that draped elegantly across her shoulders, simple but commanding. She framed the bus pass in glass-slipped copies of bank statements and childhood photos into a leather folder and rehearsed words in front of the mirror until her voice no longer trembled. The day arrived cold and clear. The venue was a grand hall with chandeliers glittering like frozen stars. Relatives buzzed in clusters, champagne flutes in hand, laughter echoing. Anna entered with measured steps, heels clicking against marble. Her hair swept back, her eyes steady. Conversations faltered as faces turned toward her. Richard stiffened near the bar, bourbon in hand. Linda dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, whispering to an aunt. Brian adjusted his tie, avoiding her gaze. The tension thickened. Richard's voice cut through the room. "Look who finally decided to show her face." His tone dripped with disdain. "She left her family, left her mother. Sick, abandoned us." Some relatives murmured, others shifted uncomfortably. Anna inhaled slowly, then crossed to the center of the room. She laid her leather folder on a table, her hand steady. "Enough." Her voice carried sharp against the murmurs. "For 23 years I was told I was independent, strong, that I did not need support. While Brian was celebrated, I was dismissed. Tonight, you will all see what that looked like." She opened the folder. The first photo showed Brian's birthday party with ponies and a castle cake. Beside it, her own with a grocery store cake and 2 guests. Gasps rippled. The next page displayed her valedictorian speech program family section empty, juxtaposed with ticket stubs from Brian's soccer game on the same day. More gasps. Then came the bank statements, Anna's student loans, thousands still unpaid, contrasted with tuition receipts marked paid in full for Brian, including his year abroad. Richard's face flushed. "That was different," he muttered, but his voice cracked. Anna reached into her purse and placed the framed bus pass on the table with a deliberate thud. "This," she said, lifting it high enough for all to see, "is what my father gave me on graduation day. My brother got a Porsche. I got this." Silence engulfed the room, broken only by the clink of a glass slipping from someone's hand. Her mother whispered, "We never meant to hurt you." Intent does not erase impact. Anna replied, her tone even but cutting. "Being capable does not mean I deserved less love." Brian finally spoke, voice weak. "I never realized. I thought you were fine." Anna's gaze softened for a moment, then hardened again. "You never asked. You never looked." The relatives shifted, whispers spreading. Some nodded, their faces etched with recognition. Others looked away, complicit in the silence of years. Richard slammed his glass down, liquid spilling. "This is nonsense. Family sticks together no matter what." Anna's voice rose clear and unwavering. "Family is not who shares your blood. Family is who shows up for you. You never showed up for me." Grace appeared at her side, then a quiet sentinel, her presence a reminder that Anna was not alone. The weight of truth hung heavy in the air. The chandelier sparkled above, the music had stopped, and for the first time, Anna felt taller than her father. She gathered her folder, leaving the bus pass on the table as evidence. Then she looked around the room, meeting the eyes of cousins and uncles and aunts. "I am not asking for pity. I am demanding recognition. I will not be invisible anymore." With that, she turned the navy fabric of her dress sweeping behind her and walked out into the cold night air. Inside, the hall, whispers grew louder, the Parker image unraveling under the weight of exposed truth. The aftermath of that night spread through the Parker family like wildfire. Within days, whispers traveled across relatives, friends, and even business associates who had attended the wedding. The story of the slap at graduation, the Porsche with its red ribbon and the $2 bus pass spilled from lips in hushed tones, each retelling cracking the image Richard had spent decades cultivating. Clients of his small construction company began to reconsider contracts uneasy about partnering with a man known more for arrogance and cruelty than reliability. By winter, the company lost its largest deal, and with it, the financial stability that had propped up his pride. Richard came home one evening, his face drawn, telling Linda that he had been laid off from his own firm after the board voted him out. Pride turned to rage, rage turned to bourbon, and bourbon left him smaller than Anna had ever seen him. Linda, too, could not escape the weight of exposure. Neighbors who once admired her holiday parties now looked at her with pity, whispering about the daughter she had dismissed. Stress gnawed at her body until chest pains landed her in the hospital, doctors warning of hypertension fueled by years of denial. She began therapy not out of growth, but out of necessity. Her fragile image shattered. Brian fared no better. The Porsche that had symbolized his supposed success was repossessed after months of unpaid installments hauled from the driveway by a tow truck while neighbors watched. Without the car, his bragging fell flat. His friends dwindled, and soon he lost his job at a startup that had only hired him because of his father's connections. Stripped of support, he spiraled into debt and disillusionment, his arrogance collapsing into silence. The Parker name, once displayed with shallow pride, became a cautionary tale. At gatherings, relatives spoke of Anna with newfound respect, murmuring that perhaps she had been right all along. Some even called her brave. The family that had built their identity on appearances now faced the consequence of truth. For Anna, news of their decline reached her through cousins and the occasional overheard comment at community events. She did not gloat, did not celebrate their downfall. Instead, she felt a strange mix of grief and release. The weight she had carried was no longer hers. The consequences had finally fallen where they belonged, on the shoulders of those who had created the pain. She looked at the framed bus pass each evening as she worked on new blueprints, reminding herself that justice had not come through vengeance, but through exposure. The truth had been enough. Winter gave way to spring, and Anna's life in San Francisco settled into rhythms that felt both fragile and strong. Her studio apartment, once bare, slowly filled with evidence of a woman building herself anew. The crooked lamp cast warm light across shelves lined with pottery she had shaped by hand, each bowl and vase a testament to survival. The futon had been replaced with a bed she purchased after her first steady paycheck, its quilt sewn by a neighbor who had become a friend. On the wall above her desk hung the framed $2 bus pass, no longer a mark of humiliation, but a symbol of the night she chose herself over their cruelty. Work at the architecture firm consumed her day's deadlines, pushing her to refine designs that would stand as permanent markers of her skill. Her supervisors noticed the precision of her drawings, the creativity in her concepts, and within 6 months she was promoted to project lead on a mid-sized community center. The news filled her with pride, not because of the title, but because it was hers, earned without handouts, without favoritism. Grace remained her anchor, cooking meals together on weekends, dragging her to pottery fairs, reminding her with a laugh when she worked too late. Therapy continued as well, Dr. Levine guiding her through the slow work of detangling guilt from identity. In one session, Anna admitted she no longer woke from nightmares about her father's hand, though sometimes she still felt the echo of his voice. Dr. Levine nodded and said healing was not the absence of scars, but the acceptance that they no longer defined you. By Christmas, Anna hosted her own dinner for the first time. Friends crowded into her small apartment, laughter bouncing off the walls, the smell of rosemary and roasted vegetables filling the air. Grace raised a glass to Anna, who builds stronger foundations in buildings and in life. Anna flushed, tears pricking her eyes, realizing she had created a family that chose her. As the year turned, she received a message from Brian. It was short, almost clumsy. "I am sorry. I did not understand." She read it twice before setting it aside. Her chest tight but calm. She did not reply immediately, knowing forgiveness would come in her own time, not on demand. Weeks later, a package arrived from her mother containing a small box. Inside lay the dollhouse Anna had loved as a child, its roof, faded windows, cracked but intact. Beneath it was a note. "This always belonged to you." For a long time, Anna stared at it, unsure whether to laugh or cry. She placed it on a shelf beside her pottery, a relic of a childhood she was finally reclaiming on her own terms. On a cool evening, she stepped out onto her balcony overlooking the bay. The city lights shimmered against dark water, the bridges arching like veins of gold across the horizon. Beside her on the railing rested a mug of tea steam curling into the night. She whispered words she had once struggled to believe, "My worth is mine to define." Behind her, the framed bus pass caught the lamplight, its ink faded but still legible. To anyone else, it might look like trash. To Anna, it was everything the reminder of the night she walked away, the proof that freedom was worth more than luxury, the symbol of healing that had taken root and grown. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and smiled into the quiet, knowing the life ahead would be built brick by brick, not by their favor, but by her own hands, and for the first time she felt truly whole.